Okay, got a Craftsman weed eater, and it's somewhat of a mystery. Confusing might be a better word. I put some starting fluid in it. After 3 or 4 pulls, started up, died. Well, I thought I better be thorough, because I always try to be thorough. So I checked the spark. It had spark, of course. It started. And then I checked compression. And compression is so low, there's no way it should have started, but it did. So that confuses me. I don't understand it. I looked up Craftsman weed eater WS, and I tried to figure out some sort of decompression, but I didn't find anything. I mean, decompression is not something that you would expect on a small weed eater. The bigger steel chainsaws that it's got a decompression, manual decompression lever, maybe. But with the square inch of compression, 120 pounds of compression per square inch, you don't have that many square inches on these little ones that it's hard to pull. So the bigger the cylinder, the harder it is to turn over. Since it's starting, I just went with the assumption that maybe my understanding of compression on this particular weed eater just don't understand. So I moved on, and I started looking at the carburetor, and what I noticed was that it is very difficult to push in. And if you watch the hoses, there's no gas in it, but if you watch this hose right here, you should see gas spurting this direction. You saw a little bit, just a little, but not, that hose should fill up eventually. The bulb is very slow to come out. I don't know if you can see that, but it's not coming out yet. It's like it's under a vacuum. There's something stuck. It's hard to push. See, it doesn't want to come out. I thought, well, maybe the fuel line is clogged. So I disconnected it, and I blew through it. And I couldn't blow through it. And I thought, aha, there it is. But while it was disconnected, I pushed this again. See, I'll take it off. And it still hasn't come out. It's still stuck. It just doesn't want to come out. The priming bulb, there we go. Now this other one is the discharge, so I'll take it off just in case maybe there's too much. And so I took that one off, and you still see the priming bulb is stuck in. It doesn't, well, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it is stuck in. Maybe you can see it with my finger there. This is the way it should look. I'll pop it out. And then, see, a little bit of gas came out, but it's stuck in. I'm thinking there's something in the carburetor jamming it up. So I bought a new carburetor. Now, the carburetor was pretty cheap, I don't know, 10, 15 bucks. So I figure if it is a compression issue, maybe there's 2 things going on with this thing. I really can't say. But if there's a compression issue after I replace the carburetor, then I figure, you know what I'll do? I'll just take the new carburetor off, keep it for myself for a later project, and, of course, tell the guy that is. So we're going to take the carburetor air filter off, I should say. So we'll take out these 2 screws, and the whole thing should pretty much fall apart. And you got the throttle. This one's a really easy throttle to get to. Doubt if you're going to be able to see it, but I'm looking into the cylinder through the carburetor intake, and I don't see any scoring on the piston on this side. Now what you're supposed to do is take the exhaust off. On the exhaust side, you should be able to see the cylinder walls a little bit. The problem with this is I would have to take the entire shroud off of the weed eater, and I don't want to waste any more labor cost on it than necessary. It is cheaper to go ahead and buy the carburetor, test it out. If it doesn't work, take it back off and save it for a later project than it is to take that off. I know the compression is low, but I don't know if it's actually harming anything. So I'm going to change these fuel lines just in case something is clogged up in it, which I don't think it is. We'll change out the fuel filter. So one of these lines is, this line here is for suction. So fuel draws up into this one, and the other one is for the discharge when you're priming it. This is supposed to have a piece at the end of it so it doesn't fall out of there, and that piece is sitting in the bottom of the gas tank. Right there. This is supposed to sit right there, that way it doesn't pull out of the gas tank. Okay, so I'm going to put some WD-40, make sure you can see it in the camera, so it's easier to get into the hole. Okay, on these, it's always a good idea to make a starting point. So we're going to cut this in half and remove half of it. So I've made a slit through the center of it, and we'll cut the half off. And if I need to, I can make that into a kind of a narrowed shape. I got it in, got it to go through. So now I'm just kind of fishing it through a little bit. And you can tell from the old one how much you need left out, because there's a groove where it kind of sunk in. Kind of measure it up a bit. And then we'll cut this piece that I cut, the little tip, we'll cut that off. Make sure your hands are clean when you put on the new air filter, or if it's one of these, make sure you don't touch the filter itself, because your greasy hands are going to get it all dirty. Okay, so now we have another hose that we need to get through. Now this one's just going to hang just barely through the tank. Okay, I got it to go through finally. Now this one we're going to pull all the way through, nearly almost all the way through, and then have to pull it back because we need to put that retainer clip thing in it. Now I'm going to pour gasoline in it, make sure that it doesn't leak. Now make sure your hoses are higher than the gas level, otherwise it'll just come out of the hose. And so what we're doing is checking to see if there's any leaks around the hoses. If you ever need to get the gas cap out, just use a pair of needle nose. It pops right out. Okay, so the box of goodies. So we got the carburetor, we got fuel line, so we got 2 primer bulbs, plus the one that already comes on it. We have a new fuel filter, a new spark plug, and 2 gaskets. Now the thing is with the gaskets, this didn't have gaskets on it when I took it apart. So you want to make sure that you don't want to, that it doesn't need a gasket. If I put a gasket on this hole here doesn't line up with that hole here. And the same applies to the other side as well, I think. I didn't really check. Maybe I should have checked before I said that. Yeah, it doesn't line up. So it's pretty obvious that these gaskets go to some sort of other machine. So we'll start to assemble. Put the fuel line on, or the throttle cable. I apologize, that's the throttle cable. Okay, so we're going to put our fuel lines on, and I'm going to verify that I have them hooked up correctly by simply adding gas and pumping the primer bulb and watching which one it flows out of. It should be this one. If you recall, this one is the one that didn't have the filter, but it had the little tip on it. Now we're going to tighten this down, but I want to caution you about tightening bolts on a weed eater. Maybe even chainsaws, but don't tighten them very tight. They strip out really easy. So what I would recommend is tighten them loose, like I just did, and if it won't run without the carburetor being fully on, then you can tighten it a little more. But if you tighten it too much, they strip out, and there's really nothing you can do after that point. I mean, you could tap it and all that stuff, but that's a lot of extra labor. Just be cautious. Okay, so now we're going to add some gas. Now I'm going to check that priming bulb. Okay, gas is going the right direction. And I primed it. I should have gotten the camera, but you might be able to see this hose is going back into the tank. That's what we want. So we didn't get that backwards. Okay, so we'll give this a try. Okay, so while I was off camera, I didn't do it on camera, I had to make adjustments on the high-low here. You may actually have to adjust your carburetor based on the fuel-oil ratio, altitudes, all kinds of things could happen. So what I noticed was when I come down here, when it was idling, this was still spinning. So that meant the low, you might be able to see right here on the side, it says L. So you know that one is the low. I had to turn that one down a little bit until this stopped rotating. And then when I pulled the trigger, it felt like it was, or sounded like I should say, it was too rich. It just didn't have that that strong running sound in full throttle. So that means the high, which you might see the H right there, was too low. So I had to turn that one to the right, a quarter turn, maybe a half a turn. Now the low, I only turned maybe a quarter turn. It wasn't much at all, but that one I had to turn up a little higher. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this cool off, and then I'm going to start it again to make sure that those adjustments sync correctly. What can happen is inside in there is a diaphragm. The diaphragm can get dried out. Even sitting in your, you take all the gas out, you let it sit over the winter, and it dries out. So what you got to do is you got to get that moist again. So if it's dried out, you start it, it might start, you put some starting fluid in there, and you hold it full throttle, whether it's running correctly or not, full throttle, and you get enough gas into there, then it will start to run correctly. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let that soak up a little of that gas, let it cool down, try starting it again to make sure the adjustments don't need more adjusting. So if you'll click the up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was working on something. So I hope I can inspire you to fix something today so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.